Justin, can you hear me now? I can see the audio levels spiking, so that is a good sign. That's incredible. I'm so glad that happened because I tested that 3 times before we went live. Sheesh. All right, cool. Cool story. I think we're good now. Um, but yeah, so I guess if you didn't hear the beginning 2 minutes of this, which apparently was everyone, um, welcome to VNN Live. I'm Brittany Harlow, VNN lead journalist and founder. Um, and I just wanted to say a huge thank you for tuning in, especially if you are hanging in there and now actually listening to me. Um, this is a big outlet to reach our verified news community. And whether you're a verified news leader or a verified newsie just tuning in, just kind of seeing what we're about, um, it's our mission to empower women, minorities, and entrepreneurs through news media. And this month being October, we are doing the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It seems like there's always a different day, a different month, a million things that you could be talking about and bringing awareness to. But domestic violence, especially here in Oklahoma, where we are headquartered, super important because there's not a lot being really done to stop abusing and hurting and taking advantage of women. And, being that person that steps in and helps them out, it doesn't take a lot. We actually have opportunities in this very live stream where you can help a survivor of domestic violence and assault. So first, now that you can hear me, thank you again for joining us. We'd love if you could be a part of the conversation, and that means sending us an email, me in particular, Brittany B. Harlow at verifiednews.network. My email is up there, or just drop us a comment in there. You'll see that there's already one comment in there, and that's a link to donate. We'll talk more about that later. But if you're not going to hang out the whole time, I guess I will just mention that all of the donations that we receive for the month of October are going to be going to promoting our April Wilkins story. And so we spent a lot of time producing that story. April Wilkins, currently incarcerated in Mabel Bassett Correctional Center in McLeod, Oklahoma. She's been there for 23 years. And that is a big story, probably our biggest story of the year that we've worked on. And it's interesting because I think it was about 5 months ago, her niece reached out to me through a podcast or a blog that she does, and asking me to look into the case. And I saw that she had killed someone. I was like, wow, she admitted to killing them and going to his house. And I was like, well, that is, uh, that's a pretty crazy crime. And I looked into it a little bit and I was like, yeah, I don't know how much is really here. And so I got caught up doing other things. And I think she either reached out to me again, or I was like, let me take another look at this case and kind of browse through the blog. And it was incredible. The evidence that showed time after time that she was the victim in this case, and that law enforcement did nothing to protect her from her abuser. And the justice system, once she was on the other end of the crime, just completely destroyed her in court, kind of ignored all the evidence and literally said she was not a victim. So that is a big thing, probably the biggest thing that we're going to be the main thing that we're going to be talking about tonight. Like I said, sound off in the chat. Let me know what if you have any questions or anything about this case or about what we do. But I've had some comments already. The story was published on Monday. We actually had started promoting it yesterday to, we're a smaller independent network and we don't have as much of a reach. That's why we're really trying to get out there and build our community so that these important stories that we're telling hit a bigger audience. So it was published in our app. As an independent news network, we have our own app it's a social news media app, which means we have a variety of different users who upload stories. We have independent journalists. Obviously, I'm the lead journalist, but we have additional journalists in more states like Michigan. You can see there. We have another really active journalist in New York who does a lot of community news. We also have our news affiliates and then, local organizations, government entities that publish news through our social news media network. But this is the story that we had published on Monday that a lot of people have come to see. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see the audio or hear the audio on this, but I'm going to try so that you can preview the story if you haven't seen it. I'm going to listen to this whole thing later. Obviously, we've had technical difficulties, but this is what it looks like on YouTube. The title of the story, of course, 2 decades later, a woman sentenced to life for killing her abuser still fights for freedom. Not too bad as far as viewership, about 3K. We are hoping to see that turn into 10K and 100K. And we would like all the help that we can get with that. And so that means sharing this story. And that means anything that you can give towards, if you want to help tell her story, donate it to VNN for the entire month of October. Like I said, we're taking all of our donations that we receive and putting it towards paid promotion of this story because we really feel like this is a story that needs to be out there. But I'm going to go ahead and play it, and just so you can see the beginning of it. Thought that would be a cool preview if you haven't.
Like living in a horror movie.
April Wilkins has been serving a life sentence at Mabel Bassett Correctional Center in McLeod, Oklahoma for the last 23 years. Her crime? Killing her rapist and abuser, Terry Carlton. So that's obviously the beginning. You can see the full video, 14 minutes long. The whole video is done in that comic book style. It's called a VNN Illustrated News Story. And if you haven't seen our last live streams and posts and various ways that we connect with the public, and you would have seen that we tried really hard to get an on-camera interview with April Wilkins. It's not unheard of. Reporters interview inmates, all the time. Maybe not in COVID times as much, but it's something that's still being done in the country, and that's been done here before. And we asked, once we were denied, if it was because of COVID that we were denied, and we never got an answer. And they kind of just stopped answering us. And so that was really frustrating. But since we had planned to do this as an illustrated news story anyway, it just basically made more work for our graphic artist. And I did want to give you a cool look at what this looks like in its entirety, because we actually have to create an entire comic book when we create stories like this. And so this is what April Wilkins' comic book looks like. And we can actually flip through it, and you can see how much time, dedicated time, went into doing this. So it, like I said, it took about 4 months to create this, and which was necessary when putting it together with the graphics. And we had a really great local artist, Autumn Leaves. She's, if you actually go to our app and you can click on VNN collaboration to see the different stories that we've collaborated with local artists. But you can also go to like scrolling down, which unfortunately is not a skill that I've mastered yet. I saw a tutorial that you could scroll, but if you go there, app.verifiednews.network, and click on that story, you can actually go down and connect and get some information about Autumn Leaves. She's on Instagram. It's Autumn Leaves, one word and 3 S's. And so she was super helpful. And I also, while I'm kind of giving shout outs, I wanted to give another shout out to Stream Shirt. Now that I'm actually able to be heard, and they have really helped us get our live stream game going. And we use OBS and for live broadcasting, and it's really cool. I'm obviously still very uncomfortable with it, but I want to say that we're evolving at a nice pace, and in a month or two you'll be watching these live streams and be like very impressed. But yeah, we had been on, gosh, months ago now, I guess 2 or 3 months ago, a reality TV show for entrepreneurs, because we are news entrepreneurs at Verified News Network, an independent news network. So we went on a reality TV show that's airing, our season's airing next year actually. And they just really gave us some tips about how to use the software, and how to grow our community and reach people. And so that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to keep doing these live streams, and hopefully people will connect with us through our news that we're telling. And that's the goal, is to see these comment boxes fill up with comments, and I can answer people's questions and know what people are thinking. And I did want to snap back to our YouTube video, and let me see if I can interact with it again. Kind of change the, yeah, and that's another thing that's mentioned in the article, and that you can actually hear in the video. What made this story really incredible was the fact that so much evidence in this case, as far as what this person did to her before she ultimately killed him, that was just, I don't know, I wasn't there, in 1998 when this happened, but I would have to say that you would pretty much have to flat out ignore all the evidence that was there, that showed you that she was a victim of systematic abuse for years. There, in these tapes, that she actually recorded him, blaming her for making him angry, and that's the reason why he physically abused her, and admitting to uh, the terrible things that he did, and saying that he apologized once and she should just get over it, for doing some really heinous acts to her. Um, Things that were admitted. He had a restraining order against him. He had an active warrant for transporting a loaded firearm after breaking into her house that he got arrested for, not long before she ended up killing him. And, I talk with her pretty much once a week, evolving around the story and kind of and sharing her coverage. But she admits that she was not like, a perfect person, that, has made mistakes. But I honestly feel like the mistakes and what she suffered uh, was equal, if not worse, to the crime that she committed. And now she's going to spend the rest of her life in prison because no one cares about her, and because this happened more than 20 years ago, and she fought back against abuse to save her own life. So, I mean, the story's all there. We went all in sharing what had happened to her and what led up to her killing him. And we had some feedback on our YouTube channel, as those comments look like they were deleted, I think, but I read them and responded to them. One of them was, this happens to women all the time. I wish I screenshotted it, but I didn't. Um, you know, I feel bad for her, but she's not special. And I had answered, if this women get sentenced to life in prison all the time for killing their abusers. I don't think that's true, but I asked for examples and I didn't get them. But even still, it's like that, and just reading that, I was like, wow, that is the mentality, I feel like, for a lot of people. Like, what does make her special, and that it's not like a big deal anymore. And the fact that a woman is in prison and has been in prison for more than 20 years for killing someone who admitted to raping her and abusing her, um, and not a lot of people care about that. I feel like screaming, like, what's wrong with everybody? Like, why aren't we all getting mad and upset? Is it because maybe, she's already been there for 20 years. Like, who cares if she's there for, the rest of her life, however, another 20 years. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the mentality is for everyone not getting enraged about this case. But another person had asked, why didn't she call 911? Well, she had called 911 multiple times. In fact, this isn't something that I included in the story because obviously the story was long enough, but she had told me that it was some kind of a like running joke in the police department, the Tulsa Police Department, that she would call 911, and her abuser had a police scanner, so he always knew when they were on the way, and he would always escape before they got there. And she had restraining orders against him in the past, but they weren't being enforced. And so it's like, you hear that, like, oh, well, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? Okay, we put a lot of blame on the victim when she was sitting there getting abused systematically for years and tried getting help multiple times, but no one would help her. Why didn't you keep calling 911 repeatedly when they weren't doing anything to help you? To me, it's like, okay, 911, when she called them, they weren't, that's not like a lifeline that she felt like she could reach out to or hold on to. And so it makes a lot of sense why if you're being tortured and terrorized for weeks on end, like as explained in the video, um, going to pick up a phone when you think that you're about to be killed is not really the first thought. But that's essentially what the state of Oklahoma proved in that case, is that she should have died. If you were being abused, you didn't leave him for whatever reason. You kept going back to each other. You kept having things to do with each other. You didn't cut ties completely for whatever reason, whether you were threatened or whatever. You kept that going, and so you were either supposed to deal with it or die, which is what she felt the direction was that she was going into, was going to be getting killed by him. And so that was essentially her option, is that you keep dealing with this abuse until you die, and that's the only thing that we have for you. But she didn't want that, and so she killed him. And um and the thing is too, is like, okay, she killed him at his house, but this was after she had been terrorized on end. She says he took her guns, her pepper spray, all of her weapons. He ruined the locks on her doors and in her bedroom, so that she really had no safety and kind of just living in this constant state of horror. And so she says that she went to his house, hoping that if she went there when he was calm, that that they could work something out, and that he wouldn't be all fired up, and that they could both get on with their lives. But obviously, as you can see in this story, if you've watched the story, the 14-minute video that we had done, that is not how that went. And things got really bad really quickly. And when, to me, hearing the way that she told it was self-defense in that situation. It's a very complex situation. When you're, in a very abusive, violent relationship, your brain, especially if you're, being terrorized and pretty much hysterical, your brain's not really functioning at maximum capacity. And so that's why she had in court, uh, they were using the defense of battered women syndrome. But her court appointed lawyer didn't bring in an expert on battered women syndrome, which to me was, it's just kind of like, I don't even know what is worse out of all the things that were wrong with her case, about how they didn't bring in certain evidence, like the tapes, that where he admitted to raping and abusing her, and they didn't, bring up the fact that he had tested positive for all these street drugs and she didn't, and the fact that all the physical evidence all over her body that proved that she had suffered a lot of different kind of assaults that night, like that, none of that stuff was brought up. So it was just, I am really thankful that her niece reached out to us, that we could do this story on her. And I'm really hoping that the community, everyone sees this story and, gets as fired up about it as we are here. And so that's why we took all this time. We put all this effort, all of our resources into telling this story. And I'm really hoping that people that are watching this or see us or see our posts will also want to contribute to help her. Because if we don't do anything, there is a very great chance that she could spend the rest of her life in prison and never get out. She's applied for parole, and she hasn't gotten it. She has tried to get her sent. She obviously tried appealing the conviction. She's tried to get her sentence commuted, but Oklahoma is just hell bent on keeping her in prison for the rest of her life. And I should have mentioned this before. It's mentioned in the story itself, and I have mentioned it before in other areas. But the reason why this case went the way that it did is because this person that she killed was the son of a very rich, local, powerful man. And so that is a huge factor, I believe, and other people that I've talked to that have dealt and kind of looked at this case or know anything about it. Her, the man that she killed, who, her ex fiance, who had been assaulting her and abusing her, was the son of Don Carlton. And if you, I don't know where you're watching this from, but if you live in Tulsa or anywhere near Tulsa, you'll know that name because he owns like this huge chain of car dealerships, and he's a millionaire. And obviously, his son was also wealthy from that family wealth, and that is pretty much how he, the son, really swept this woman, April Wilkins, off of her feet, so to speak. And she, told me she grew up without a lot of money and that, she had never had anyone treat her this way. And, she was really dazzled by the money and, ignored the warning signs that he had a really bad anger problem. He, started hurting her. And that was a huge reason. Like, even now, local press in Tulsa, TV, radio, they don't report on it. And I would be so shocked if they did report on it because the Don Carlton Honda is like one of the biggest local advertisers of their media. And so you don't do stories that put them in a bad light if they're the ones that pay your bills. And unfortunately, that means that stories like April's get buried and they never get told until someone like me comes along that's like, okay, well, I have the resources. I'm just going to do it myself, and I'm going to hope that the public helps me. And honestly, I have not got a lot of help from anyone. With this story. It's been a lot of my own paid work that I'm paying other people to do, but that could really change. And I'm literally telling that like every dollar that we get in goes towards getting more views and more awareness and more information about her case out there to the public. And so I dropped our link to our verified news community there in the comments. If you see it, that's our PayPal. Every dollar that we get in donations this month is going to paid promotion to her story to help out and hopefully get some public awareness about this case and, hopefully make a difference in her life. And, she told me that even if nothing else comes out of this, just having people know her side of the story, her full side of the story for once is an amazing thing. And I told her that people would support her, whether that's just by watching her story or, commenting, writing in on her behalf. There's a lot of different opportunities where people can help her. But I knew that if people saw her story, then they would be supportive because what happened to her was terrible. And stuff like that is still happening to women here in Oklahoma. Like, people are still being treated that way. Women are still not given a lot of options against abusers. There's recent cases, like people I know that have suffered atrocious acts committed against them. And, there's barely anything done about it. It's just like something that's not, that doesn't cause outrage here. And I really don't understand it. I did a story in the past with VNN about, for women who commit crimes and why they get, why the law is so much harsher on them than it is on men who commit the same crimes. And there was a woman that I spoke with named Rhonda. She runs She Brews Coffee House, which helps justice involved women, Rhonda Bear. And she had told me that through her experience working with the justice system in Oklahoma, that it is a common held belief that if women are do something violent, then they are held to a harsher standard because it's not in their nature to be violent, and that men who do violent things, it's more acceptable because they are violent by nature. And that sounds crazy, but that's how people think here. But I'm hoping that more people see the story that haven't seen it before. um, they will they will think kind of the same way that I'm thinking, that this is really messed up and that she has served enough time, and that the state is the one that should be apologizing to her for letting her down and telling her that she wasn't a victim, and deciding that she should have died as opposed to fighting back. And she's being punished by being in prison ever since. So that's the reality of the situation that we're trying to bring to light. Um, I did want to shed a light on something else that I'm glad I'm kind of hiding this at the end here. But essentially, we have a couple different ways that you can be more involved with our verified news community and stories like this. We have our Substack, which is where we have exclusive content for our verified news leaders, but we also have a lot of free content like weekly digests of our stories and a monthly roundup of like videos that we talk about our top news of the month. But we also have really exclusive stuff, like I said, specifically for our verified news leaders, who are the ones that are supporting our work directly, funding it through our Substack or our Patreon. And I had mentioned that I was going to do something wild and crazy with our Patreon, and I did it yesterday. And so I'm going to see how it goes. We're constantly growing, like I said. You're going to see it. You're going to see it really rough and tumbly and bumps along the way, and starting live streams without audio, starting late, experiments live on the air. I'm doing my best, and I think that I'm getting better every day, and that's the whole purpose. So that's good. But another thing that I'm doing is, if doing live streaming with software I'm unfamiliar with, and these stories that really drive up my heart rate. I've also recently dedicated myself to a series called The Journalist Diaries. And just a really brief blurb about that. It's something that I realized while I was doing this story about April Wilkins, that journalism for me is very painful. It's very painful to tell these stories. But these are the kinds of stories that I'm drawn to, the stories of abuse and injustice and complex issues that we need to stop oversimplifying. And I was really like thinking to myself, and really like kind of coaching myself to understand more about why I'm drawn to these and why I can't quit and why I'll never quit. And it was through that I love helping people, but it was something different. And I finally figured out what it was, and it was really deep, and it has a lot to do with what I experienced as a child. Like, I had a really hard childhood, which I thought was, everyone has really hard childhoods, that a lot of bad stuff happens to them, but apparently that's not the case. That some people don't have bad childhoods and don't experience like a lot of trauma and abuse and neglect. But for me, that was my story, and I really wanted to have people understand me at like the deepest emotional level, because I'm asking a lot from the public. I'm asking you to trust me as your source of information and news, and to believe what I'm saying and to understand where I'm coming from. But at the other end, I was not really telling people a lot about myself, and I was keeping a lot of stuff hidden. And I am a very private person because that's a lot of, that's a lot of hard stuff that, I experienced, and that I don't talk about a lot or share or, like, even think about a lot. But I should, because that's why I'm a journalist, and all that stuff factors into why I tell stories and why it's so important to me. And so, even though it's a lot for me to give to do that, I realize that I'm asking a lot of people to give by, giving their trust to me. And so I feel like it's a pretty even exchange. You trust me to tell you, like, you trust me to be telling you the truth about things as best as I can. And, I trust you with, it kind of giving you those intimate details about myself to help gain that trust, because that is like a huge missing piece, if that all makes sense. I have to figure out how to make that better because it's like very deep and emotional, and very important to me. And I feel like, and I mean, maybe it's not important. Maybe you don't need to know me or who I am in order to trust what I'm saying or believe me. But I really feel like, if we're going to have this connection, and if we're going to truly be a verified news community, then that is something that's really important. And so I do plan on getting more in detail with these streams. And I, especially if there was people there asking me questions, I would definitely answer them. Lucky for me, there's no one in the comments right now asking me really terribly intimate questions, so I don't have to answer them. But I mean, eventually that will probably change. But for right now, these posts are so, personal and intimate that I just don't want to be throwing my heart out there to just anybody. You learn that as you get older. You have to be really careful, or not willy-nilly with who you're giving your info to, because a lot of, people don't really care. But that's why, at least for the time being, like, those real kind of in-depth looks into me as a journalist and me as a person are on our Patreon. And so the level that they are is $7 a month. And so it's like, it's not me taking that $7 a month and, I don't even know what people blow money on, really. I invest everything back into the company. And so what you're paying for by, you're essentially proving to me that you are a verified news leader, that you care honestly about receiving new information and trusted information, and you want to trust me, and you want to fund local news, because the funding all just pays for stories. It's not just stories like April Wilkins. It's, stories about other, women in our communities and minorities, positive stories, as opposed to, what you typically see in some communities. It's about entrepreneurship, which we feel is so important to improving work-life balance and helping families be happier and healthier. But I guess that is going to be pretty much the last thing that I wanted to say. If you want to, subscribe to either our Substack or our Patreon, the links are right there for you. And now if you wanted to do the $7 a month or more, what that would get you on our Patreon. It'd be a very deep look at, sorry, my cat is screaming really loud. But that is essentially what that would get you. And I just want to say that I'm super grateful for you tuning in, and kind of, I know I talked a lot about April Wilkins, and it's not going to be the last time either, because, we have streams every week. And I'm hoping that by next week, we have a lot more public support. We have a lot more donations. Again, the last time, link to donate, verified news community. We really need your help in getting her story out there. I mean, I can't describe how dire that situation is any better than the fact if people don't help and there's not enough public support around her, then she will spend the rest of her life in prison for killing her abuser. And I feel like that would just be a really terrible thing. And it's something that we can all come together and stop. So, again, if you donate to our PayPal, link is in the comments, then every dollar we receive in the month of October will go towards promoting her story. And we really just need to blow this out of the water so I can have some really good things to report to her and give her some rays of hope after being in prison for more than 20 years. So again, Verified News community, thank you so much for sticking around, and I will catch you next Wednesday, hopefully audio from the get-go. But, if we don't have it, then I'll figure it out like I did tonight. Okay. Thanks again, you guys. Go to verifiednews.network if you want to have some more info about us. And then, of course, app.verifiednews.network is where you can find all of our stories. Verified Newsies, Verified News Leaders. I will catch you next week for VNN Live. It's been a pleasure.